No, Square is like an hour and a half.
All right, so we're going to go. Yep. So we're going to abbreviate this a little bit and keep it to about half an hour. And Dylan Smith is going to. I just made the executive decision to start that. So he's going to join us in a second. But Michael Foley, we're very recent. Like how long?
6 weeks.
Okay. And Joe High, 2 years.
2 years.
2 years. So why don't you guys tell your story a little bit, and then we can get into however you want to do it, discussion.
Well, I've been wanting to launch my site for a real long time. I took baby steps along the way. It's just mostly been fear of being homeless, so that's why I launched it so long. I needed a paycheck. I was, poor, and I couldn't go 3-4 months without a steady paycheck, so that's why I felt like I could never launch. So my story goes back to living in Seattle, working, I got out of journalism and was working in PR in Seattle in 2008, 2009-ish. And there was just an abundance of spare time in my life that I've never had before because I wasn't a journalist anymore. And there's lots of inspiration in Seattle, lots of hyper-local blogs. And then, the Twitter sphere and all that was starting to blow up. And I had all this time, so I built my skills. Curiosity kind of took over, and I started figuring out how to put stuff online. And then when Patch started doing its mass hiring in 2010, I was like, I need to be a part of that. So I moved back home to Wisconsin and started my Patch site in Hudson, Wisconsin. And I loved it. It was real successful. There's lots of, word from on high, Patch headquarters, you have to do this. And I ignored all of that, and I think that's why I was successful with my site. So, my boss would tell everybody, this is what we have to do, and I'd be like, that doesn't make sense in my town, I'm going to do this other thing. And I got results, and so my boss said, yeah, sounds good. So that worked out for me until it, obviously didn't work out, and saw the writing on the wall at Patch, I knew it was going to fall apart.
But
and
you instinctively understood that you needed to do what people in your town wanted and needed to know, rather than what was, the template.
And it was always. I guess I just had that entrepreneurial spirit, and I didn't want to listen to anybody else, so I did what I did, and then while I was doing all that Patch stuff, I was also kind of laying the foundation for my escape. I was, I registered my domain name in 2011.
He was plotted.
I was. It was kind of scary to think about now, but I was undercover. I went to Street Fight as a Patch person, and everybody was like, "Oh, we hate those Patch people," and I was like, "Oh, but I want to be you." So it felt really weird and intimidating to walk into a group of people like you all, who I admired, and you all just didn't want anything to do with me, didn't want to teach me anything. So it was real hard to figure out what to do next. But I got a lot of inspiration and ideas from Howard Owen's post, How to Launch Your Own Local News Site in 10 Not So Easy Steps. And I followed that as my Bible and guidebook until I could figure out who to ask to do the next thing. So after I got out of Patch, just before the layoffs, I worked at a newspaper for a while because I still needed a paycheck, and plotted further, and made my escape in June, and started my site in August. So.
And you came to the last summit here.
I did. I was undercover working for a newspaper, so I was like, please don't put me on the live stream. Yeah, and now my former boss will know that I was plotting all along. And but I don't know. I'm really grateful that the newspaper job was there when I needed it, because I wasn't ready, and they needed somebody to work at the newspaper. So
you still kick ass doing that job. So
I hope so. I hope people feel that way. But that's my story. But what was really hard for me was I was trying to find all this information, and I wanted to, okay, is WordPress the way to go, or there's a million things. I literally had made myself a long ass list of everything I needed to do in order that I needed to do it, and I'd get to something that I had to do a lot of research on, and I didn't have a way to ask anyone. I had to kind of fumble around, which is what you all did, but I feel like it's a solved problem now, and I should be able to access those answers.
It's getting there.
And that's what I'm hoping. I'm really excited to hear that you guys are working on mentoring, a mentoring program or something like that.
We've got a grant application in that maybe we'll get it, maybe we won't, but we'll
5% chance.
depending on. And but really, what we want to do, and if we don't get the money to do it in the way that we really think it needs to be done, we're going to continue to develop in the smaller things. But we want to make a bigger impact, and we've got a certain pool of knowledge from people who've developed it, and we need to figure out a way to disseminate that, because I really believe that there needs to be a Lion website, maybe not necessarily a member, but there needs to be a local independent online news publisher in every damn city and town across this country. Because back when local news was healthy, it was local. When newspapers were healthy, they were family owned. Run by a family that owned that one, or maybe 5 newspapers. And
maybe we should see if we can launch 500 next year, like Patch did.
and that's why that crap fails. But what we want to do is have a startup academy for very new publishers, people who are just planning, in the planning stages, or people who are, in their first year, and very, very carefully vet the people who are going to participate, because just as we do with members, we can't afford the bandwidth of people who are just going to have a hobby and not try and build a business and not try and build a lasting news organization. But everybody in this room wants to build something that is going to be of value for the long term. And certainly people who are, independent bloggers, people who providing commentary, things like that, that's a valuable part of the journalism ecosystem. I mean, it's important to be happening. But there need to be people out there asking the actual questions, performing the original acts of journalism, finding things out. And so getting people up to speed with that, and also mentoring somewhat more established publishers into new revenue streams, especially, perhaps new content areas, new approaches, just, better organizing how it is that we share information so that it's easier to find, especially for somebody who might just have that idea percolating around in their head.
And I want to
have that resource of.
I want to be able to tap into people like Joe who have brilliant ideas on newsletters.
Michael, is that list still available?
The checklist?
Yeah, it's on a sheet of paper in my desk.
You just scan it and send it to me?
Yeah, he'll take a photo and print it out and
I'll tweet
fax it to you.
Hey, Dylan, how long have you been doing the Tucson Sentinel?
Since we went public in January 2010. After almost about 8 months of planning, they shut down. I was the online editor for the Tucson Citizen, and that pulled the plug on May 16th, 2009. I still have one of those little desktop calendars with the tiles that you change. I changed one side, the other set to May 16th.
So they pulled the plug on your job?
Yeah, they pulled the plug on my job, and I went home and had a few beers and waited till after the stroke of midnight, so I was no longer an employee, and registered a domain name.
And so when you did that, did you have any planning beforehand? We
went through a agonizing 5-month shutdown.
So all knew it was coming.
I went in, to work. We all went into work every day, not knowing if we were going to come back the next day. People who would normally go home around 3 o'clock because they came in so early would stick around until 5 and be like, well, the word didn't come from the East Coast, so I guess we're coming back to work tomorrow.
So what did you learn at the Citizen that you transitioned and took with you to your own publication?
I learned a lot what not to do. And I think everybody who's been in a legacy outfit has learned a lot about what not to do or work for Patch and what not to do.
Well, I think the biggest thing is just say yes to people when they want to do stuff, or don't say no.
You're saying yes now to everything?
Well,
That's rude.
as much as I can.
I'm going to Wisconsin.
No, when people want to work with you, find a way to work with them. When people want to give you content, find a way to make them happy, or at least just being able to say yes and not saying, sorry, we have a policy that says we can only do it like this.
I was a little bit fortunate in that the newspaper I worked for, we were the PM paper, the scrappy underdog already. So I'm used to kicking against the big boys because that's what we did. We had a newsroom that was, maybe half the size, probably a third of the size of the morning paper that the one that's still publishing. So I'm familiar with the role that I'm in. Trying to kick upstairs. Even
So
harder.
you get a lot of traffic to your site.
Not enough, but it's growing. Yeah.
Define a lot of traffic, I guess. I mean, you get more than you're more than 250,000 uniques a month.
No, not that much.
100.
Yeah, maybe 150, 160.
150.
I think
That's still considerable. That's a mass appeal audience.
But we're not going towards. We don't do all of the popular things that everyone else does. We're in a market where there are 4 TV stations and radio stations and a daily newspaper and an alternative weekly and a business publication.
So what's your niche?
And so we try and do very thoughtful coverage much more quickly than everybody else. And that trying to combine those two is a little difficult sometimes. But we want to take especially public policy issues, things that are going on in the community that you need to know about, and not always getting completely geeking out about them, but here's why this is important. So over this past year, I was talking about in the tip session yesterday, we've taken on Metro columnist, which gives us some voice, and I try not to have too much of a voice about things because I want to be
He's radical.
no, actually. I'm all over the map when it comes to that. We've got this guy who can really write with some voice and some deep knowledge, and he completely geeks out on things, but he also talks in at times some pretty plain-spoken language, and maybe let him curse in his column, almost as much as he wants. I take out about every third fuck that he throws.
You mentioned Howard Owens.
Yep.
And I don't know if y'all know this, but Howard Owens runs a website in Batavia, New York. It's a town of 15,000.
Batavian.
He gets 10,000 unique visitors a day. And so what did he teach you?
Well, this blog post basically is what he taught me. How to launch your own local news site in 10 not so easy steps. It's from September 27th, 2011. And it starts with pick your community to cover, go to the local chamber and talk with the people there and ask them how many local businesses are owned in that area. Come up with a list if that's available. Gather up any media where locally owned businesses advertise, the shopper, the local newspaper, just any advertisement you can find.
Scope out the competition.
Yeah, find and make a spreadsheet and answer your question, what's your nut? So how much money you have to make a month to keep the lights on? Because if you don't go in with that question answered, you have no target.
Yeah.
So pick your publishing platform. I knew pretty early that I wanted to go with WordPress because I was just really comfortable with WordPress already. Prepare to sell advertising, and that's and that's the one I was like, oh, gulp, here we go. I don't know how to do that. So that was a tough one. On the same day you start selling ads, start posting stories. So that was
Don't create this giant editorial albatross around your neck without starting to pay for it.
Right. Well, and yeah,
That was one of our downfalls, that we spent a whole lot of time planning, trying to get things right before we took our apps out. We probably should have launched a whole lot sooner. Lean, mean,
Is it
what they
hard?
call in software the minimum viable product.
Is it hard to get business owners, local business owners, to buy advertising on a site that doesn't yet exist?
well, I
People
don't
know
really.
who he is.
That's the
already.
thing is because of Patch, I could leverage my my charm. Like, hey, I saw your kid playing hockey last week.
That might be a better question for Joe.
Well, the way I did this launch at San Angelo Live was we were a Drupal web development shop. I mean, we had big clients all over the country. We used that money, that cash flow, all for a year. I sat there and we did the interviews. And I was sitting in an LA hotel room interviewing someone to be the editor-in-chief. I remember doing that 6 months before we launched. So we had built up a large amount of cash on the front end, plus we had continuous cash flow. We're about 8 months into the project. So
Cash flow from
from web projects.
Okay, so
So-
unrelated to the.
Unrelated kind of
Okay,
news.
Just
We
learn the
used-
code is what he said.
Yeah, learn the code. And you know, the whole coding world, the web development world was going mobile at the time, so everybody wanted you. You were in high demand, so it was very easy for me to do. But it wasn't hard, it wasn't easy on my, you know, I had no sleep.
Right.
I was constantly. I was
So
working
back
on it.
to approaching the business owner, and you did this.
Okay,
as well.
approach it as
Approaching the business owner and saying, I want you to buy an ad, because number 5 says, you've got this content ready to
The
go.
first thing
We're
you
going to
gotta
start
do-
it all at once.
You need to make a splash into your market. You've got to you've got to do something to let people know you're there. And when we did that, we did it with Facebook, because I knew a lot about Facebook, you know, algorithms and stuff. And we just started reporting on strange stuff like, you know, the STD rates up 300% in San Angelo. I mean, I'm a little bit of a Randolph Hearst kind of guy, right?
That sounds like up in
And
Sinclair, but
in
okay.
reality, I'm gonna sidebar this for a second. Headlines are important for social media, and if you've heard these like Seth Godin, these internet people, these gurus that go get paid thousands of dollars to speak at internet conferences, they'll say that, you know, paper was your scarcity back in 1996. I mean, to get some publisher to actually spend money to put your words, your ideas into a book, that was a scarcity. Well, today you can write a PDF. Heck, you can publish a Kindle book. You know, anyone can do it. The scarcity today is mind share. All right, and your audience is getting hit with all kinds of stuff. I mean, go to an NBA basketball game, and the stinking seats are flipping ads. You know,
Right.
So you got to use hyped up headlines to get attention. Now, don't do it to the point where you're completely destroying your credibility. But I mean, you know, you bend it a little bit. You know, get it edgy. That's what we did, but we didn't really find our voice.
So like somewhere just shy of National Enquirer or something?
No, I'd say go National Enquirer.
Full on.
You're talking, I mean, clickbait, but
Yeah,
you
it
can
is.
still be credible and have clickbait.
Well, yeah, I
It
mean,
has to be interesting and informative, and you know, here's why you need to read this damn story.
Right.
And maybe it doesn't need to be, you know, 7 shocking things that happened at the city council meeting,
yeah.
because probably nothing
But
shocking
it
happened.
sounds to me like
Here's
you're,
why it's
that you've got the content going first.
Yeah, you do need to make somewhat of a splash so they know what you're doing.
Okay.
And what'll happen if you do it that way, the way I did it, people start talking about it. You know, like the buzz was, well, they're not going to make it. There's not enough news in San Angelo, Texas for another news source. Those kinds of things. That's what you'll hear. But, you know, luckily we had the cash flow from the web development, you know, keep us driving along. And I'll say, we'll figure it out somewhat, you know.
What I'm kind of hearing is
That's where I'm
you
at right
didn't
now.
you didn't go to the local business owners and try to get them to buy advertising
No, we
on
started.
a site that was not up and operating.
Yeah, we had to get the site up and going, but we did, I mean, almost immediately go and start selling it.
You didn't pre-sell.
No, we did pre-sell.
You
But
pre-sold.
We pre-sold.
But did you start that outreach to business owners while you were still very young?
Yeah.
And because you got to build that relationship, and you know it's going to take you a long time to sell that ad.
Yeah.
If you don't start out of the gate approaching people, and you know, you're as much marketing your site with that handshake as you are trying to get somebody to give you a check. You're just letting them know people exist.
Right.
And
Exactly.
down the road,
Okay.
you can build that into something. But if you wait until you've got 2 months worth of archives and have done some great reporting, and to actually go make your first sales call,
You burned a lot of money.
and a lot of time, and it's going to
That's
take
right.
you another 90 days. Do you have 6 months before you get one paycheck? You know,
Well, and that's
maybe
where
you
I
do,
think
maybe you
Patch
don't.
went wrong, because we didn't even have to have, like, boots on the ground, any ad salesperson in our region for like 2 years.
Really?
Yeah,
We had them right away.
we didn't, you know, but one of the questions that I had was, even though we've been around for a little while and we've got ads on the page, we got money coming in, my head is spinning for the last 2 days, and I'm like, where do we start, like, implementing some, what was the golden ticket, what were some of the game changers for you? Because that newsletter is just amazing, but it looks really complicated to code.
It's really not that
Well,
complicated.
if you do, that's my flash of insight from his thing, is I'm going to go home and set up in my CMS a way to pull all of that info, so it's not copy the headline, link,
Yeah.
B2B. I just need to
Copy the whole section.
I can very easily, in expression engine, in about 15 minutes, code up something that will spit out the stuff that
See, I
I
don't
want
know
to
how to
include in
code,
that.
so I mean, like, how?
You find somebody who's willing to do that 15-minute job.
Just remember this: you need
Just doesn't
someone.
do it in
I
about
want to
2
make
days.
some lists. I want to make some lists of my articles. That's all it is.
Yeah.
All it is lists. It's a list of obits. It's a list of articles.
List of different things
Yeah.
and
Okay.
how you get them in
And
there.
placement events.
And then yeah, you have,
Yeah.
and on the template, I use Drupal. I use Drupal views. There's no special module. I mean, I did use a custom views template because there's a lot of tricks in HTML newsletters. So they, primarily to make them look good on Microsoft products.
But you have to put in all the font tags and all that extra gibberish that.
See, I think this is easy for you because of your background.
It is. I mean,
But it's not something that should
It's not-
be an expensive thing for anybody to implement. This is not a $5,000 investment. There will be some asshole out there that wants to charge you $5,000 to do this thing, but it's 15 minutes worth of work.
Is there anybody in the room that's pre-launch?
Pre-launch.
Well, that's why you had money.
We got 2 people pre-launch.
I like that better than wannabe. I like that.
Wannabe?
Well, you're in the planning stages. I mean, you're doing it seriously. It's not well, I'm not going to.
I wouldn't come to Chicago this time of year from
Exactly.
Florida.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're at where I was 2 years ago.
Well, the biggest thing on all of this is you got to develop. I mean, I learned this from a radio station. His name's Larry Mariner. He runs KDLK in Del Rio, Texas. He goes, Joe, you got to have a mass appeal audience. And that's what I've really. I mean, he told me that back in 2001, and that's always stuck in my head. Build a mass appeal audience, and the formula for us for doing that is private crash reporting attracts the eyeballs. We try to get them stuck on the site by subscribing or liking or following us on Twitter, and then we engage them with civic stories. That is our content strategy right there.
So we hardly do any crime.
You should.
Because
But when you do crime, you get put on Drudge Report.
we do, border and immigration stuff is one of our core beats. So when, the Border Patrol puts out a press release about how they found, 18,000 pounds of pot somewhere, we'll write up that news brief.
And then Drudge puts it on Drudge.
But, we take the other sort of approach of trying to, we're not going after a niche audience per se. I mean, we would like everybody to be reading us, but we try and take a
Intellectual.
not even intellectual. I mean, we're smartasses. We're not like a PBS. I always end up getting funny looks when I'm walking out of the PBS station after I've been on TV because I said something.
How many
not
people?
quite
How many
fit
people
the
live
show.
in Tucson?
Our metro area is 1 million.
1 million people. So you built somewhat of a avant-garde intellectual niche in there.
Maybe. I don't know. What we try to do is go after people who are, movers and shakers, involved in politics, whether directly in politics or an activist, and people who are concerned about the community, and whether that's people who are in business and understand that we need to live in a place that has just a better place to live so their business grows.
Right.
Some people are smart business people like that, others are not so much. And that kind of fits into the kind of stuff we want to cover.
What's your beat?
I'm still trying to figure out my voice right now. So
Hey, you hear that? That's key. I think figuring out your voice, and you may not know what your voice is when you start.
yeah, well,
And we don't want it to evolve.
I mean, we've changed several times, and of course, because we're small, some of that depends on
Who's writing for you?
who's writing for us, who's willing to contribute, what we can find some support to do. If all of a sudden somebody gave us, some money to support a series on, reporting crime, we might pick that up. Of course, we would take a kind of an analytical approach as opposed to chasing ambulances because there are already a lot of people in town chasing ambulances and doing. I'm standing here in the dark outside where something happened 5 hours ago. That's done. And really, to be different, you have to go where they ain't. And
Right.
maybe that's a different way of covering things.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just doing different stories. But you can't do the same thing. If your intent is to go do the same thing that somebody already is doing in your town,
There's no value.
you're just wasting your
Look for the
time.
news boy. Michael, what's the void in your?
What,
I think I can. I mean, we have a terrific newspaper, and I'm not just saying that because I used to work there. But they do what they do. They do like their sports guy will write a terrific story about the football game with stats and awesome pictures, action shots, and it comes out 6 days after the game was played. So my opportunity is, okay, I can get something out that night. I can do it with video. I can do it with, instead of one terrific action shot, I can do a gallery of shots.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where they ain't. So I can. That's the nail I can hit with my hammer.
That is important, getting stuff out first.
Faster, smarter, better.
Yeah.
And that's what we kind of go with. You know, so we could definitely almost always do it faster if we're going to do it. Sometimes we just don't have the bandwidth, and we're not going to do it at all.
Right.
We can't do it if we can't beat them to the punch. We can't, do a much more credible job, and we can't maybe do it even more comprehensively.
You're not adding any value to the media landscape if you're just also running the same story.
So if you can't get there first, don't be an also guy. And the other thing about being first is important, is particularly if get your site indexed into Google, and make sure you do the site map. WordPress has the.
Can you teach me how to do that real quick?
Sure. Just install the plugin. Or do the site map.
And then go tell Google that you have it installed. They need to know
That's
where
what
it is.
Yeah.
I've got the site.
Just pull up Webmaster Tools and
Google it. Google Webmaster Tools.
And make sure that you've got all that stuff squared away.
So Lion needs a guide to tell people how to do this.
That's going to be on video. What's that?
If you use the Yes plugin, the Google Sitemap is just automatically.
Yeah.
But you need to go and tell Google that you have it.
And tell Bing you got it. And it's very important to get indexed and get your headline right. And the other thing I've learned is I put San Angelo in my headline multiple times because people search for San Angelo TX. That's go to SpyFu and spend your $80 to do some keyword searches on what people are searching for around your town. So you learn what the local searches are, and then it's called SpyFu, kind of like Comfu.
Okay.
SpyFu, SPY. And then FU.
Another tech tip is make sure that your metadata is right, that your Google, the OG tags, Open Graph tags are all right, because that's what's going to generate your display, your little preview on Facebook. And if you notice how a lot of sites have just terrible previews on Facebook.
Yes.
Like the image is all jacked up, and the summary says the summary goes here, and all of that. Make sure you get that squared away, because that's how people.
Is that how that's messed up?
Yeah.
No.
And
You need to
probably
specifically
that's
tell Facebook, here's what to show. Otherwise, it's going to take a guess, and although sometimes it'll get it right, if you don't have a very well-coded website, it's going to, guess completely wrong, and just pull the ad image in as the preview image on your story, and that nonsense.
And that's why I went with a template on WordPress, so a theme that it's a solved problem for a lot of people. So I just followed the leader on something like that.
Michael, it sounds like your former employer newspaper is a weekly.
Yep.
Was that on Fridays?
Thursdays.
Thursdays.
Yep.
So that's why. So the Friday night game doesn't get reported until next Thursday.
Right. Well, it hits newsstands at noon on Wednesday, but everybody gets it in their mailbox on Thursdays.
Okay.
So sometimes you'll have a 9-10 day window. Right. If something happens on a Tuesday afternoon, they won't have it in there until the following Thursday. So
right. And now
I can really crush them on
you've been
something that
going
happens on Tuesday.
You've been going for 4 weeks now.
6 weeks.
6 weeks. 6 weeks.
Yep.
Do they have a web presence at all?
Oh yeah.
Is it all concerned that they could just kind of up their game?
And that's what happened when I started Patch. I remember my first time I covered something at Patch. It was a city council meeting where they were choosing the new mayor. They were going to appoint the new mayor, and they appointed a council member as the new mayor. And I was live posting. I didn't even have a site yet. My site hadn't launched, and I was just putting it out on Facebook. And I had it up, what the vote was, quotes, and I had it on Facebook immediately. And then my newspaper guy, who was also sitting next to me at this meeting, it took him 9 hours to get something on the web. It was 900 words, and then he put a breaking news hashtag, on the story. And I'm like, if the breaking news threshold in this town is 9 hours and 900 words, I'm going to be great.
Yeah.
But since then, they've really upped their game, and when there's another show in town, everybody ups their game, and I think that's just better for the whole town.
If you're in a, I call them homogenous communities where they're not abutting a major metro. For example, Bernie, Texas abuts San Angelo's. I don't know. That's kind of like a San Angelo DMA kind of, or San Antonio DMA. But I'm out here in the middle of nowhere. It seems to me like Facebook is the place that everything happens. Nothing much happens on Twitter. And we drive a lot of traffic with Facebook. In fact, it's probably 70% of our traffic.
Ours are equally now.
Are they?
Yeah.
We're starting to run out of time. Maybe to wrap up, we can go around the room with those of us who've been running for a while and give like one quick piece of advice. And you've been running for a while. What is your piece of advice? And Steve runs a website that's even more non-profity and investigative than mine is.
Wonky. Mine's more wonky.
They're very wonky and data-driven and do amazing work.
I wish the first hire would have been a development director instead of the third hire.
So that's a sales guy, a revenue guy?
Well,
Yeah, finding money. In the non-profit world, development, writing grants.
grant writer, put together a membership
old
program.
ladies trying to get donations.
Steve, what's your site?
thelensnola.org.
So money.
Money.
If you are a content person and know how to do good reporting, go find money.
Right. A lot of us got shown the door at traditional newspapers and said, hey, the printing press is free now. We're going to do great work, and people with money will come to us.
Oh, of course.
And,
They'll just you will be buried in an ocean of cash.
Yeah. And while
That's how it works.
while we were lucky with foundations, for the first 3 years, we had enough money on January 1st to make it through the year. And that's just not normal, I've come to find out. So we were lucky, we were fat and happy, and we didn't have to work very hard, and I wish we would have worked harder right off the bat.
Our nonprofit, we didn't get a single grant for 3 years. Yeah, we ran strictly on some small local donations and what is this, essentially the nonprofit version of advertising, local underwriting. A very different experience. Who else has been running? Kelly.
So just if I knew.
A quick word of advice.
Have insurance, even if you don't get the liability insurance, have regular insurance for your business and make sure you're covered for things that involve your employees, like employee dishonesty. Do background checks on your employees if they're going to handle your money.
You can see this is kind of going in the same direction.
And just don't ever think that you're big enough to where somebody else needs to go get your checks out of the P.O. box. Go get them yourself.
Oh. Wow.
Thin.
Hey, she got there. She got there.
The insurance is important.
Sign your own checks.
You do that.
T-shirts. Jay, it's T-shirts.
Things I wish I knew.
Yeah, when you started up, what have you learned along the way that people who are a little bit newer to the game should? What's your bit of wisdom?
Lower your expectations for speed of audience growth. Like, just don't. You're not Twitter, and you're not going to be Twitter, and it's not going to happen for you like Twitter. I mean, your audience growth is probably going to look a lot more like an airplane taking off than it is a rocket ship. Now, there's probably somebody in this room that can give me an exception to that rule. But
it really depends on your competitive environment too.
But for us, it was just we kind of had this illusion that we were going to do this work, and everybody hated Gannett, and it was going to be fantastic.
Yeah, like readers actually know who Gannett is or
yeah,
care.
We just had this sort of reality distortion that we lived in terms of audience for a while, and then we immediately became evident on day 2. The audience was like my mom and the founder's mom.
It's like that commercial with that girl who does that crazy dance that she finally sold something to someone who she wasn't related to.
Yeah, right. And so you kind of it was temper your expectations, but then build your business plan around significance and things that don't require you to sell audience, because you won't have audience for a while.
And in addition to that, when you do get breaking news, hang on to it like a dog with a bone and push it, and get it out there as hard and fast as you can. Every time we had a big spike from breaking news, We didn't come back down to where we were the week before.
Yeah.
We stayed up here.
Yeah.
Other breaking news, we stayed up here. Breaking news is the key to growing your audience.
Amen.
All right, can we wrap it up?
We're getting the hook.
So we're going to transition directly into
That was
the other
great, guys.
sessions. There are all 3 rooms. This one is creative revenue contracts. I can't remember, but we'll get your schedule for the other B and C.